Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Omnia Performance Podcast with myself, Fergus Crawley.
Myself, Jonny Payne.
And Dan Wallace.
Again, round two. If you haven't yet listened to round one, then I recommend that you do, as it provides a lot of context for this episode that we're not going to go over again. So treat that as your first instruction and treat this as your second instruction. Please hit follow or subscribe if you haven't yet done so. Make sure to share this episode or an episode previously with a friend. Do rate and or review us on whatever platform you're listening on. Check us out on YouTube and subscribe there whilst you're at it. Thank you very much.
Oh, I do all that. That was my input there.
That was good. That was good. Thank you, Johnny. I'm sure everybody's pleased with your input. Well done.
Oh, now that he said do all that, I understand everything Fergus said.
Yeah, that was translation for those that are north of Inverness. So in the previous episode, we basically discussed Dan's career as a Olympic swimmer, which started and developed quite young. But there is a lot of discussion on what happens after the Olympics, and I think it's probably even more demanding when it is in a sport that is so monostructural and essentially simple as swimming, because it's pool tiles, water, speedos, and work. It's pretty much how I'd summarize it.
Yeah.
If I was,
I don't know, rude.
I don't know in what context I'd have to, but like decathlete, there's more going. Like it's such a singular focus for so long. I can only imagine that coming out the other side of that and making the decision, this level of swimming that I have worked most of my life towards has come to an end.
I see what you're saying.
What happens next? So
what you're saying is the focus being so
swimming,
even in its own definition.
Swimming more so. I mean, even sprinting, you kind of there's more you can engage with outside. You can kind of observe more than you can just head down in the pool tiles. It's the sport that I train out of what I do, where I feel the most focus is required. Yeah. It feels very rewarding getting out of the pool. It feels very rewarding getting out of lakes, sea, etc. But I am always conscious going into it. There's a part of me that's just like, oh God, I'm just going to be staring at the floor for an hour.
Yeah, you got to get locked in.
And you did that for 20 to 30 hours a week for many, many years. You won a gold medal in Glasgow at the Commonwealth Games. You won 2 silver medals at the Rio Olympics. And you've danced with Michael Phelps several times. I think he won every time, which is pretty standard Michael Phelps behaviour. But you may have out-eaten him on blueberry pancakes. I've seen a lot of people talk about that online, so there's a chance. But nonetheless, I think essentially the question is, what happened next and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so I always had a really good relationship with swimming, and we spoke previously in the past podcast about never setting like an end goal. What that allowed me to do was kind of leave the sport whenever I wanted. And after, as you mentioned there, Fergus, kind of winning those medals at the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games, like I was in a really lucky situation where I felt like I'd achieved more than I ever thought I could. I felt happy with the results, and I was young enough, 25, where I could kind of move on and, not just be Dan the Olympic swimmer, because I think that there came a point where I didn't want to just that be my sole identity. I'd do that for as long as I can until I drop. And I think that there was a moment where my coach at the time in Stirling said, kind of like, what are your goals for the next 4 years? And I wrote down more or less everything that I just achieved the previous 4 years, because it was win medals at the Commonwealth Games, represent Team GB at Olympics, win medals there. And I was very lucky that I'd just done that. And for me, I needed a new challenge, and that wasn't, I guess, exciting enough for me, or I felt like that I was maybe scratching away for something else. So yeah, I decided to stop at 25, which in swimming terms is maybe a little bit earlier than a lot. We just previously spoken about, like, so Michael Phelps went on to his early 30s, the same with Ryan Lochte, and those were guys that I raced against and was swimming the same events. So physically, I think I could have kept going, but mentally, I felt like I needed a new challenge. So it is the transition from elite sport to life after elite sport is a difficult one for a lot of people. It was a difficult one for me, but I kind of enjoyed the roller coaster of it, of realizing who I am outside of sport. I actually worked a lot in athlete transition after my retirement, a few years after, once I'd got a bit more life experience, and we worked a lot on kind of those transitional skills. And that's something that I had to really think about when I first retired or stopped competing as an Olympic swimmer. I was like, okay, what am I good at outside of swimming? What am I good at outside of sport? I remember like writing my first CV, being like, what the hell did I put on here? Like
Fucking Olympic medals. That's what you put in your CV.
Just take pictures of yourself.
yeah, like, but that doesn't work. That's what I realized.
Duke of Edinburgh silver. Try Rio 2016. Big Four consultancy firm.
Hired. Like those are things that I had to go through for, like kind of for the first time, and I was really keen to gain some real life experience. So, and I was almost like, I don't know why this was, but this is definitely my mindset at the time was I wanted to really distance myself from sport or from elite sport, from high performance sport. And I don't know why that was. I think it was because it was obviously super intense. There was high pressure. Even though I did really well, it was so fresh to me that I was like, everyone's like, oh, you're going to go into coaching, you're going to do this and that and swimming. And I was like, I need to get away from sport. I want to do something completely different. I've kind of now come full circle, and I am now working in sport again, which I love. But there was definitely a time where, for some reason or another, I needed to be separated from that. And I think that was because my identity at the time was, Dan, this Olympic swimmer, and maybe I didn't quite like that all the time, because I was like, oh, there's actually more to me than this, and there was and there is, and I had to really learn like what I was good at and kind of just fundamental skills, and kind of from there realized that swimming will always be a part of my life. And only recently I've realized that my swimming journey is going to continue, whether it is in a coaching aspect or even, as a swimmer myself. I'm now, dabbling in cold water and outdoor swimming, and that's something that is new to me in a certain way. I've obviously got the experience of pool swimming and high performance sport, and I can, always lean on that and look back on that and use that today. But there's definitely a few other chapters that I maybe didn't see when I stopped. So, I guess the story continues.
I'm wondering why, for those that have listened to the previous podcast, which should be all of you, points fingers, given that you were so deliberated, had such clarity, had such focus, had such passion, had such unwavering attachment to swimming for so many years, why, when it came to mapping out the next 4 years at Stirling, as you referenced, you didn't do what everybody else around you was doing, which was chase more. And I'm wondering whether the deliberation, attachment to swimming, and healthy relationship with it that you had for so many years is the exact reason why you called it when you were happy, because you weren't obsessed with this concept that necessarily didn't exist in the future. Because whilst Michael Phelps was the most decorated Olympian at the time, I'm sure there's probably a part of him that still felt like, how many years can I hold on to this? If I can get as many medals as I can before I retire, then I'll hold this record when my kids are growing up, or whatever it might be. I don't know, but what made you different? Why did you walk away when everybody else around you was going for more medals, faster times?
It's a hard one. I look back on that decision and I still think it was the right one. And I think that, my competitiveness in swimming was there from day one up until the last day. When I rewrote my goals for the last 4 years, I ended up retiring halfway through an Olympic cycle. I said, okay, I'll go through to the Commonwealth Games in 2018. I did write down some goals for those 2 years, and none of them were medal based. None of them were result based. They were all about, okay, can I be a better teammate in training? Can I be more of a mentor for other people that maybe hadn't gone to the games before? Can I, start to develop skills outside of swimming? Those are my goals, and that was fresh for me. That was new for me. I always needed something that I'd never done before. So I think that, having always had a really healthy relationship with swimming allowed me to walk away and think, job's done there. Let's move on to something else.
It's a difficult thing for an athlete to do, though, isn't it? Because you don't hear about that much in actual fact.
You really
most
don't.
Athletes, you hear about, you hit the top and then you think, right, I'm going to hit the top again and keep going.
You got to be obsessed, man.
And I know it might be sort of slightly boring for me to keep going back to fights, but if I use that as the analogy, you would get the guy who wins the title, then he has to retain the title, and there's a certain point where every fan, especially people that might know a little bit and maybe work in the industry, can look on it and go, now's the time just to hang up your gloves. You're not going to be able to do any more, because there will be a point where somebody's going to beat you, and then what you're left with is kind of a bit of a feeling of oh well, that's kind of ended on a sour note, and you see it happen so much, and that's just one sport. Obviously, you see it happen in many. Were you aware of that you could end up kind of in this Groundhog Day cycle of chasing something that then kind of degraded a little bit more and more, and then you're left with your memories being a little bit, I don't know, that you speak against those kind of moments.
Yeah.
You start to remember the things that then peeled off a little bit, as opposed to that top end that you described in the last podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so hard to like leave on top. It's so difficult to do. It's like, you know, playing poker, right? Like you're on a roll.
Right,
you want to keep going. You want to keep going. And
and
it's very difficult to call it at the right time. And maybe I didn't call it perfectly, but I think that I felt that was a good time to leave. And yeah, I think that the decision that I made was definitely something I back. And I just saw other athletes like maybe they got a fourth place finish one year and they're like, oh, next year I'll get a third.
Yeah.
And they don't get it again. Okay, next year I'll
Four-year
get a
cycle of
third.
the Olympics as well.
Yeah, it's like,
must
you know,
weigh heavy on your mind.
If it's all going to be result based, then say you go, okay, next year I want to win a bronze medal, and then I'll stop. What if you win a silver medal? You go, oh shit, I'm actually pretty close to gold. Maybe I'll keep going. I'll try and get a gold.
Yeah.
But then you get a fourth, and it's like, okay, it's 3 more years that you've just dedicated, and maybe you enjoyed it and stuff. But if you're chasing results all the time, whether you surpass them or just miss them, it's addictive, and it's like next year. I didn't want that. I felt I was very lucky that I'd just come off some good results, and I'm like, I'm done.
So you did recognise all that you've described there. You saw as a kind of a future, a negative augury.
Yeah,
this could be. This is a point at which it's an intelligent moment to walk away, and there's lots of other things I want to do with my life.
Yeah,
and I don't want that.
100%. That's exactly the way I saw it. I did see that there could be a negative spin on me keeping going. Obviously, there could have been a positives. I could have broken world records, but I was happy enough with the results I'd had, and I could kind of see almost like an easy way out. In a way,
it's
I'm
like
sorry, Fergus. I'm going to presume your family were 100% behind that.
Yeah, as much as they loved watching me compete, and my nan brings it up every single time she watches my races every weekend.
But we discussed it in the last podcast. But it's worth saying that it was really uplifting to hear about how overtly supportive they were. Your mum especially writing the emails to the show, but also that there wasn't any pressure on you. So it sounds like that would have been the same.
Yeah,
but
they definitely.
Was that also echoed by teammates and by coaches and things? Or was everybody happy, or was anybody kind of drawing you back in the bucket?
You've left us high and dry for the next Commonwealth Games, you bastard.
Yeah, no, you're our man, Dan.
There was definitely support in the decision because I articulated it that way, and I told them this is why. They were like, totally agree with that, totally fair. We'd love you obviously at the next games, but maybe in 2 years' time, maybe you wouldn't even make it. So we can't put pressure on you to stay because sport is relentless and ruthless, and maybe you would miss the games by that. So we don't want that pressure on us. So whatever you decide to do, we're happy. But yeah, like once you make that decision, you are kind of then like in the big world for the first time. And I remember I didn't initially have much communication with any of the governing bodies in swimming, and maybe I didn't felt like I needed it, but looking back there maybe wasn't as much support after I was done as I thought originally. I'm now much closer with them now, and I speak to them all the time, and I'm doing a bit of work for them now as well, so that's a really healthy relationship now. But at the time I kind of did feel like once I made the decision to stop, it was like, right, now you're kind of on your own in a way, and I struggle with that a little bit for sure.
The analogy that came to mind was, if you climb Everest, you can't stay in the death zone for very long. If you try and stay in the death zone for too long and sort of bask at the top, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And whilst killing you is an obviously aggressive metaphor in this context, is the process of getting to the top of Everest and then being able to come down to share the experience and reflect on the experience with yourself and those around you is the value of climbing Everest, not lingering on the top for too long.
Or getting to the bottom saying, I'm going to do it again and again and again.
Yeah, because you're increasing the risk and you're increasing the demand, and it's the same sort of analogy that you had the innate insight to be able to walk away, which is that's against the grain. Rare. It's against the grain, isn't it? Yeah, which is interesting. So going
touching
back
on your referenced transition earlier on, and you were saying that you kind of felt a little bit lost. Is there a process now then, or was there a process then, and has it changed to help manage athletes in your position through that process, or is that something that exists? I'm interested to know that whether or not there are, fail-safes in place for people that might be going through the same thing now.
Yeah, it's always difficult. I mean, athletes quite often bring with them very similar skills and very similar traits, but they're all going to be suited to different environments, whether you're talking about like different industries they're going to go and work in. Some of them want to work in sports, some of them don't. it's hard to know which ones you're going to enjoy unless obviously a lot of athletes go through the university system and they get a degree and they already know I want to be an accountant after I represent my country at the Olympics or whatever it is. But some of them don't. Some of them, they train at universities, they get their degree, they have a degree but they maybe don't know what they're going to do with it. They then finish swimming and they say, I'm great at time management, I'm great as a leader, working in a team. We all kind of have that as athletes, but there is this kind of like unknown of, okay, well, what industry am I going to do well in? So it is kind of like, at least for me, it was like trial and error. I originally said that I didn't want to work in sports, so I kind of made sure I didn't do that. I worked in kind of events and operations and logistics, and then kind of even in like sales and marketing, and I had a whole range of experiences now, but I think I needed that to realize that I don't like any of those things, and I'm definitely more suited to sport. But I just think for me, I felt like when I retired, that was my sporting career completely finished. And for me now, that what I'm seeing is that's not true at all. It doesn't have to be pedal to the floor, winning and competing and achieving the best results on like a world stage. That's not sport, all round. For me, that was what sport meant. For 15 years, it was about being the best. Now it's not about necessarily being the best, but what else can you get out of your body? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm starting to appreciate now. I've definitely got more to give, and I didn't realize that when I first stopped. I thought, that's it, it's done. I need to do something completely different. But there's definitely new things I can achieve, new ways I can find success in sport, and then specifically in swimming, which is really exciting because I have this newfound passion for outdoor swimming and cold swimming, and kind of seeing what else I can do, closely within that industry.
You spent 20 to 30 hours in a pool for 10 years, 50 to 12, 13, 14?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. Did you ever swim in open water during that period of time, other than the splash about on holidays in Mallorca?
Nah, never. I didn't have any time.
How did it feel when you first started getting into locks and reservoirs and actually swimming in open water? Because it's very different, isn't it?
It's completely different, and obviously, like, my swimming confidence was super high. Like, I never felt like I was in over my depth. But the whole experience of swimming in a larger body of water where you can't see the ground, or there's currents and there's tides and there's temperatures to deal with, that was all brand new for me. And even now, I still get a bit freaked out in the open water, but we all do. But I think that
me. No,
hard man.
Definitely me.
But I saw that as an opportunity to, like, I'm now a novice in open water swimming, even though I come with the confidence of my swimming ability being good. My swimming experience in a lake, in a river, in the sea is so low right now that it's a new way for me to find progression and success. And that's all my swimming was day at a time, be better than you were yesterday. And now I can adapt that same mindset in open water swimming because it's new to me. It's similar to what I was doing before, but it's a new discipline. So the variables are different. So there's new ways that I can learn. There's new ways that I can progress and get better at it and be better than I was yesterday, for sure.
As a purist swimmer, how much do you hate wetsuits and neoprene?
Well, when I first when I first stopped swimming,
this is gonna rile triathletes and then rile swimmers, because I reckon he's gonna give a balanced answer. So
when piss everyone off.
A completely loaded question. Here we go.
When I first stopped pool swimming, I went to the open water. I was head to toe in neoprene. And because I was like, that's what everyone does, and a lot of people do, and especially when it's like,
and it's very cold up here as well. If you actually want to swim for a long period of time, it's helpful.
You do. If you get into it, you have to kind of go neoprene to start with, and obviously if you're trying to compete, if you're doing triathlons and Ironman, like, you've got to be wearing wetsuits anyway. So I started off my kind of outdoor swimming journey wearing everything I could, and then only like this year came back to starting some cold water stuff in January. I was like, I'm going to strip it back and I'm going to go fully just budgie smugglers and see if I can actually...
Budgie smugglers and goose fat.
Exactly, right?
Old school.
And brandy.
Whiskey to warm you up. I've enjoyed... Because, when you wear the wetsuit, you can obviously do a lot more swimming. You can travel further, you can stay in for longer. But there is a side of the cold water stuff where if you do it regularly enough and you really commit to that side of things, you can actually teach your body and you can acclimatise to it, and you can get a whole other element out of it, by embracing the cold. So I'm now doing that originally, and it's been quite a nice progression, I guess, from going from your nice warm heated pool to then swimming outside but wearing, neoprene, to now just going kind of stark naked essentially, and just like getting in there and getting cold. And it's something that I'm learning about my body, is I can achieve a lot more than I thought I could. When I was a swimmer, it was all just about being fast and being an endurance athlete, but now it's like I can actually handle cold, I can handle different environments, I can become stronger and more confident in swimming in the sea, and that's something that I didn't have before.
I would love to see you do a highly spectated, highly subscribed to Ironman and come out like 2 minutes ahead of the top swimmers. No discredit to this, because you could turn out to be an absolute weapon on the bike, and then just have everybody go, "Who is this absolute animal?" And then there'll be murmurs and rumours, and be like, "I think he's an Olympian." And then they'd be like, "Where the fuck is he?" When at the bike transition.
Still getting his cleats on.
Hey, wait a minute, he's coming out of transition with his bike. He hasn't left yet. Like, I'd just love to see it. But with that in mind, is there any part of you that wants to venture into multi-sports where you can use swimming? The swim run events, the Othello series is phenomenal, and I've done one. They're very good fun. Is there a part of you that has a bit of an inkling to try your... Is there a part of you that's competitive with sport, or are you purely viewing it as I am proud of the fact that there's still more in my body to give?
I think that there's now a competitive element again. Back in 2018 when I stopped, it was like, I didn't want to compete in anything. I wanted to just, if I was doing something, like I started cycling and running, especially through lockdown, that was all just to get fitness, to be outside and to try new sports, and I've loved trying different things. Now that I've tried a few of them and I've realised which ones I like and which ones tie together with kind of what I'm suited for, I'm now starting to get a niggle of like, why don't you maybe try a competition, or why don't you get into triathlon, maybe a sprint triathlon, build that up. I'm swimming the Channel in June. Like, there's definitely now more competitive kind of itches that I have.
Just threw that in as a little thing.
I'm
swimming the Channel in June. Then he just carried on speaking.
It's been nice to try new things and see what my body can do, and now that I realise that, it's kind of tying in the competitive side. So, what
do you think you could do a 3.8k swim in a wetsuit with all that free buoyancy? Or would it slow you down? Are you so buoyant and good in the water that a wetsuit would actually make you slower?
Sometimes I do find them quite restrictive, but they do give you buoyancy. They are quite good. 3.8k, I don't know, under 45 minutes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think I could do I think I do 5k in
Lucy Charles Barkley,
swimming
background. He just absolutely tears off in the water. It's incredible to see how just.
It's funny though, isn't it? But when you're so good at something, it's funny, probably how you may forget how good you are at it. And exactly, Ian, we mentioned that again. For anyone who doesn't know, my friend Ian ran 100 meters in the Olympics. Athens, Sydney, and Atlanta, not in that order. Mm-hmm. And he ran it about 5 or so years ago. He just chatting to him at the gym. He said, "I ran a 5k yesterday. It was about 17 minutes. Is that fast?" I'm like, what the what?
How dare you?
And he says, "I wasn't sure if it was fast or not because it's not my discipline." So, and he was just chatting to me, and I'm like, "You did what?" And he said, "Well," and he just described the situation. Somebody else happened to be running. He ran with them, then realised that was 5k after a bit, so ran it back. He's like, "Mate, that's like properly competitive. You why don't you do that?" I can't be bothered. It's just
the funniest story you told me about Ian was when he was coaching you for your 100 meter times.
Yeah,
over 100 meters. I think he was drilling you over 150 meters.
I was just running
no sexual innuendos intended.
Just running 100 meters.
And he was giving you very coherent conversational advice as he was catching up with you at foot. Well done, running alongside. Well done, Johnny.
I realised I was giving my everything, 10 out of 10, full on sprints, and realised all the way through these 7 sprints he'd been kind of quietly coaching me by my side. So he'd always been running alongside, watching what I was doing, enough breath, and it was fucking aerobic, and I was like fucking running out of my skin. This is going to be the best 15-second fight.
I can't even remember how we got here.
The point of that was quite simple. It was coming back to Dan's speed, and you were asking him how fast he could do 3.8. Was I'd be surprised if he didn't do it faster than you think you could do it.
Yeah, probably. I think that's something I've realised.
Agreed.
Recently is that I'm always going to have this kind of base level of swimming, and when I go for a casual swim now, and I feel very lucky about this, is that it can be almost like therapeutic. If I'm not going for speed or training, if I'm just like going for a nice easy swim, whether it's in a pool or in a lake, like it can be super relaxing, and a lot of people struggle with that and swimming, like the breathing and this and that. I mean, I did it for 15 years, so I can do it to a really nice level, very relaxed. But then I've also realised that I'm always going to have that base level. Why not kind of see what you can do with that? So the competitive edge I have now is not so much like going head to head with other people, but more like achieving something I've not achieved in sport. So
that's where it started for you. That's what you were saying. That's kind of what your initial push was to see how far you could go.
see what I can do with it. So like there's challenges that I've got in my head, and it's like swimming around the Bash Rock in North Berwick, which is about a 10k swim. It's
the currents out there are rough as well. The one time I've actually been thinking, fuck, you're going on a newspaper article, son, was when I was training for a swim run and got caught in a current at what's the beach? The beach you got to pay through the barrier to park. Seacliff. Yeah. I kind of swam out and thought, I feel good, and I was in a swim run wetsuit and a pair of shoes, as you would in swim run. And I was swimming back, and I thought, I don't think I'm actually going anywhere. And then it started to get colder and colder. My hands started to fan out more and more and more. And I thought, yes, everything's slowly falling apart. This is a problem. Yeah. So I just absolutely redlined for a while and sort of got out of the current. But it's rough out there.
It is. But these kind of things are really exciting to me. So I get to use my background in swimming, and I get to, maybe take on challenges like that. And there's new elements to it where I'm still getting to do the sport that I've been brought up with and that I love, and I still have this passion for, but in a very different way. And the competitive is more about the challenge of X swim or X event I'm going to do, not so much about winning a medal or achieving a certain title.
I was just about to ask you that. Do you see yourself as taking that open water environment and saying, option A, I can enter all these different races, or option B, I wonder if I can do this thing that I have conceived of, which sounds more like you're going to lean towards that side of
Definitely,
things.
And it's not something that I've seen you do, Fergus, is kind of setting these challenges that are maybe different or unique or something that you or other people haven't done, and I'm like, that's super exciting, and might not be as kind of like intense or groundbreaking, but there's something I haven't done, and I have this ability to swim quite well. Like, why not swim in some cool places and achieve some cool things? It's like this newfound kind of energy for swimming, which is awesome.
But that's I think that what's most encouraging is without wanting to sound critical, there's a lot of people that find themselves in the category of being good at something and can't see outside of that. They can't see over their box in that, where they therefore look down on those that are slower than them and have no comprehension of why other people enjoy other things, because I like this thing and this thing is great, therefore you must think this thing is great. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest, most divisive things within, you could apply it to all conflict between religions. It's kind of the same thing essentially. But from a sport point of view, I think so many people are put off trying new and exciting things and new frontiers for themselves as an individual, because there's such a culture of putting yourself in a box and staying there. And you've danced around a few boxes in the corporate world for the past couple of years and found yourself back in the original one, which isn't swimming. It's self-exploration, and you manifest it through swimming, which I think is poetically beautiful.
It is lovely,
but also just shows that it goes back to what we said in episode, part one. You were born to swim.
Well, there's something really quite lovely about that as well, even just from that direct swimming perspective. I like what your poetry there, mate. But the fact that you'd walked away from it and said, right, this isn't anything I want to do anymore. I want to walk away from sport in actual fact and try these things. It's nice to hear that you've come back to it and not felt like, oh, fuck, I'm back on this treadmill again. You've come back to it and it's all fresh and brand new. It's interesting to see that you've repositioned swimming within something larger.
Shows the value of a break as well.
Well, that's where I was going to go with it.
From a purely human point of view, it shows that this shitty hustle culture of never take your foot off the gas is not healthy in the long run. And you are a better, more efficient, more well-rounded person for having taken that break. Yeah, and it will allow you to reflect on an Olympic career in a new way, I would imagine.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel that now very strongly, that I have had a couple of years of doing something that was nothing to do with swimming to now come back to it. It's like, I've seen how swimming can be a new challenge for me, which doesn't really make sense because I completed swimming. I didn't complete swimming. I did very well in indoor competitive swimming, but there's a whole other kind of range of things I can achieve within the sport, which is really nice for me because I didn't think I'd have that. Like, I was put off by the sport and almost in a way when I stopped, because I was like, I need to get away from it. But really, it is who I am. You mentioned, like, were you born to swim? Maybe I was, and I'm going to keep doing it.
I think that's the message there is fantastic, and I think let's draw that to a close because that's a fantastic pair of episodes in my mind.
I really enjoyed it. Two great episodes, like you said at the beginning. Go back and listen to the first one for a little bit of context.
If you've made it this far and haven't yet listened to the first one, then that's like watching Breaking Bad backwards, upside down, and nobody would do that.
We would encourage you to draw that lovely analogy yourself. There's something really beautiful there. Thanks for bringing that, Dan.
Dan, where is the best place for people to find you and everything you're doing at the moment?
Follow my socials, Dan Wallace 93, and then from there I'll point you in the right direction for YouTube content. Everything swimming will be there.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to everyone for listening. All the podcasty stuff, please just take your thumb and put it in the right places. You can do with that whatever you will. Purposefully vague. Johnny's excited, and we will say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Cheers.